We got too much to cover to be doinking around. It's 5 minutes after 8. I sent out an email earlier tonight. This is very simple stuff tonight. There are a handful of pictures that I hand drew that I'm going to be going over. And I need to calm down a little bit because I don't want to have this attitude. But the problem is it's hard for me to not be angry about everybody giving this phone number out to people that don't belong on the call. The whole thing, my whole existence is about my life and people not stealing my property or giving my property away. That's the whole thing. That my whole existence has been about that. In fact, I left behind a golf company that was potentially worth billions of dollars with Callaway because I couldn't figure out why somebody laid a claim to my name and thus my life. So I shelved the company because I didn't want people stealing my life. I hope you can understand why it's nobody's business. Nobody has a right to give away my time. In fact, I think everybody that did do that should go to work for a week or so and give away their money. Every penny of it. Willy-nilly to anybody that they see on the street, because that's how it feels. Enough of this. I sent pictures. There's at least 5 documents that I want to cover tonight. But tonight I said, or last night I said, there are 3 aspects of man. I call them the ABCs of man. Man's autonomy, man's business, which is what I'm screaming about right now, and man's country. Tonight we're going to try to get through man's autonomy. Man's autonomy. And the easiest way for me to start to help draw a picture of this. I've done this before in the past, and I'm going to do it again because maybe a lot of people haven't heard it. This morning, I was sitting in my living room drinking a cup of coffee. And I'll be damned if there wasn't a knock on the door. Here it is, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm pretty relaxed. I still have my pajamas on. And I look out the window, and I'll be damned if there's a naked man at my front door. Now, it's funny because, see, I looked out the front door, and I noticed right away that he was a man. I jokingly say that I wish it was a naked woman, but it wasn't. It was a naked man. Here's what's interesting about what I knew about this guy right off the bat. He had God-given, unalienable rights. Just seeing that he was a man, or that he was man, he had God-given, unalienable rights. I knew that right away. I didn't need to know anything else about this guy. I only needed to see that he was a man. That's it. No presumptions, no nothing. So I knew he had God-given rights. Unalienable rights, I may add. By the way, the only rights that are unalienable are the rights of man. That's it. Those are the only unalienable rights. So this naked man, I didn't answer the door because I didn't want him coming into my house and anybody seeing a naked man walking into my front door. So I let it pass. He finally went away. Well, about 3 hours later, there was a knock on the door, and this time, I'll be darned if the same guy didn't show up again. But this time he was wearing clothing. He was clothed in a uniform. And that uniform had emblems on it, or insignias, or patches, or that identified his employer, his occupation. And he was wearing the uniform of the gas company. So now I knew that A, the naked man had unalienable rights. But now he was clothed in a capacity from the gas company. And the gas company, because they have an agreement with the city I live in, it allows this man, while he's clothed in the capacity of the gas company, to be on my private property. But only because he's wearing those clothes. If he wasn't wearing the clothes, he realistically is trespassing. But because of the agreement with the gas company, he's allowed on my private property. Well, I didn't answer the door then either because I don't deal with utility workers. Anyway, later in the day, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was over at my favorite bar, and believe it or not, the guy comes into the bar, but now he's dressed in just street clothes, and he sits down next to me at the bar, and we get to talking. I said, you know what? You were at my house a couple times today, and he kind of chuckled. He goes, yeah, it's been a pretty weird day. I said, yeah, you showed up the first time you were naked. And he goes, yeah, I just, sometimes I get out of the house that way. I just completely stripped of all, all connections to everything. I said, yeah, I understand that. I said, the second time you showed up in a uniform. And he goes, yeah, I was going to, just give you a bill because you don't accept anything over at the mailbox. I was going to hand deliver something. I said, well, that's okay. But now he's sitting there next to me in street clothes. And we got to talking. And it was interesting because I found out that the man was born just on the other side of town from me. So he was born in Rockford, and which automatically gave me some clues. It said that, A, he was born in the same county as me, Winnebago County, and Winnebago County obviously is within the boundaries of 1818 Illinois. So I knew that because he was born within the boundaries of Illinois, he was part of the Republic. So now I knew that he had Article 4 citizenship status. So just by this conversation, finding out where he lived, I already knew, A, as a naked man, he had God-given unalienable rights. And I also knew that because of his occupation or his trade or who he worked for, his employer, by the uniform he was wearing, I knew that he was clothed in the capacity of the gas, the NIGAS, the gas company. And now I also knew that he was born in the same hometown as me, so he was basically an Illinoisan and part of the United States of America. So just in the one conversation, I know everything I need to know about this guy. I knew all three positions: his God-given rights, his uniform right, or his occupational right or capacity, and I also knew what? I knew that he was born of the soil of Illinois, giving him what? Constitutional protections as an Article 4 citizen. That's what I'm trying to say is that we don't have to presume anything. We can actually know stuff. But the reason I bring this up is tonight I'm going to talk about the naked man. The naked man, the man without the clothing, the man without the other capacities, the man without the citizenship. I'm going to talk about the man himself, because this is probably, once you understand the man, then you can start to see, as you put on other capacities or other characters or whatever, you're going to start to see that you start with the foundation, the man himself. So I'm going to get into that right now. These drawings that that are at P Cloud, these are so simple, but I think that after tonight, you're going to understand last night's call better. And hopefully it just builds on itself. Because last night I was talking about property that is presumed to be intentionally left behind, thus abandoned. And if it's abandoned property, then it takes on a whole different character, and the courts come into play. Because now there's a split in title, and when there's a split in title, there's a secondary claimant or maybe an equitable position outside of yourself. Remember, how many people have a claim, a legitimate claim upon your life? There should be only one. And if there's only one claimant, there is no trust. There is no reason to even talk about a trust when you're the only owner of your life. So all the people out there talking about trust and setting up trusts, that are doing all this stuff, they really don't know what's going on. In fact, if you're setting up a trust, you're allowing the split title. You're actually saying it's acceptable to you. You don't think that that's intent? That's truly intent to abandon. Because you're saying it's okay to split the title. It's okay to have two positions, two different positions. How many places can you be at one point in time? Can you be both here and there? No, you can only always be here. You can never be here and there. See, what they do is they teach us all about all these weird scientific principles. Heisenberg, things being in two places at one time. They do that. So you buy into this really incredible science. And then they hang you with it. They blind you with science. And who doesn't want to sound smart? All of us. We all do. We all want to pass on information that makes us seem smarter than we are. This is out of a textbook on trust. 6th edition, Paul Todd and Sarah Wilson. I did mention this in the reference material, but you don't really need to have this. I'm just using it right now because I want to talk about that trust aspect, the fact that there's only one owner in your life. There is no trust. This is on page, believe it or not, they don't get very far into it, page 2. It says, it is only when separation of title is sought that distinct equitable ownership will arise. Let me say that again. It is only when separation of title is sought that distinct equitable trust. 6th edition, again, Paul Todd and Sarah Wilson. They're saying that only if there's a split in the property will a trust arise. Will equity actually come into play? There is no equity when there's a sole ownership. If you own 100% of your life, there's no secondary position. If there's no other position, there is no trust and there is no equity. 100% equity is called ownership. Full ownership. It's not called 100% equity. It's called full ownership. There is no equitable position. It goes on to say, and this is where it gets weird, the original owner as being vested with legal and equitable title before a trust came into existence. Original owner vested with legal and equitable title. Legal and equitable, that's 100%. Being vested with both legal and equitable title before a trust came into existence. So they're actually, what they're doing is they're hiding behind words. They're making it seem like there's two positions that become one, and then it's called what? Nothing. They don't even use the word. It says original owner, original owner, original owner, one owner. It doesn't say original owners. It says original owner. Being vested with both legal and equitable title. See, they make it seem like there's a split. There isn't a split. There's never a split. And then it says, before a trust came into existence. So if there's one owner, there is no existence of a trust. I just wanted to get that way out front because everything I talk about tonight is going to be showing you that they are doing everything they can do to split that title. So there's another position so somebody else can make a claim, some percentage, some small percentage on your life. This is global. The entire world is based upon this lie. The entire world is. The entire economy is based upon this split in title, and it gives control of your life to somebody else. So what I want to do is go to, let's see. Let's just start with some of those pictures because it's the most fun anyway. And last night was brutal, and I'm still trying to undo all my madness. It's slowly happening, but I need to get into a decent frame of mind because this stuff is going to be really fun for me if I can shake this. The first one I want to look at is called the whole man. There's a triangle on it. For if you have it pulled up, there's a triangle on it. What I want to, and all of us have heard this before. what constitutes the whole man? Most people don't even think this way, but the whole man is made up of three constituent parts. Three. And that is his mind, his body, and his spirit. You need all three of those positions to be whole. If any one of them is missing, you're either mentally incapacitated and you don't have legal control of your estate. That's the mind. If you've lost your mind, you don't have legal capacity. By the way, nobody in that courtroom is considered to be competent. Why? Because they have lost their mind. Why have they lost their mind? Because number one is they don't know who they are. They can't even prove that they're alive. I mean, this is almost like mentally ill. Remember that attorneys can only deal with a certain type of person. They can't deal with a whole man. They can only deal with somebody that is incompetent at some level, incapacitated at some level. So the mind is one aspect. What is the mind? The mind is the director of your life. In fact, I'm going to go into that in a second. Let's just get through this triangle because all three elements are necessary. If any one of them is missing, we're in a lot of trouble. So the mind is one. If you look to the right of that triangle, it says body. What is the body? We know what the body is. It's your physical existence. That's the substance. It's the very thing that allows you to exist in this three-dimensional realm. If you look at it, above body it says the foundation, the grounds, the substance, the very thing. It's the thing in your life. Oh, but I'm not a thing, Kurt. Yes, you are. Your body is a thing. Now, I'm gonna make I'm gonna split a lot of hairs on this thing tonight. That's why it's important to know this stuff here. The body is the foundation, the grounds, the substance, or the thing. Things have names. Things have names. So the body has a name. Things have names. That's the physical existence here. Now, what's the thing at the bottom? What is the third element here? You got the mind, the body, and the spirit. The spirit is the spark of life. Sometimes it's referred to as the light. Sometimes it's referred to as the fire. What it really amounts to is I am. It's the thing that is the life of the body. It's actually located in the SA node, the sinoatrial node of the heart. It's where the spark, it's where that signal, where science can't even tell anybody where that signal, that spark, that thing that keeps igniting the heart to pump, that spirit. Science cannot ever come up with where that spark came from. I mean, they don't know why the heart starts to beat, and they don't know why it stops beating. When the spark is there, the heart is beating. When the spark is not there, it stops beating. The spark is the spirit. It's the fire that burns within. It's the light. And it's the I am. Well, think of it this way. I'm getting ahead of myself because this is the way I think. But when mom and dad lay together and mom's ovum is fertilized by father's sperm, it creates a unique singularity. It's called the zygote. I'm going to be getting into this in a little bit. The zygote is the first of its kind. It's a physical, it's the matter, it's the body to be. But before the spirit can enter it, it has to exist. There has to be some substance for the spirit to enter. So you can see that without the body, the spirit doesn't have a home. Remember, home is where the heart is. The home of what? The home of the spirit. The spirit lives inside the heart. The I am is in the heart. So the spirit of man is in the heart. And where's the heart located? In the body, in the substance. So if you don't have a legitimate claim on the body, this is where the idea, some people talk about the spirit and the soul as being one thing, the same thing. If they have a deed to your body, they have a deed to your soul. They have a deed to your spirit, because your spirit resides in the heart, which is located in the body. So let's do this. Let's try to put all this together before I move on. Let's go backwards here. The spirit itself, the light, the fire, the spark in the heart. What is that? That's God. That's the life force. That's the thing that makes it possible for the body to be animated, movement. Without that spirit, there is no life. So I am. That is the very thing, the essence of my existence. The body is the substance, or the house, or the temple. Led Zeppelin called it the house of the holy. Let's do something real quick, because I'm talking about autonomy as the first A in man's, the ABCs of man. I'm going to go to Black's Law here real quick, because I'm thinking about this. Black's Law, page 122. I'm looking up autonomy. And I'm also going to look it up on Webster's online. I'm going to look at autonomy on Webster's, and I'm going to look it up in Black's. Let's look up in Black's first. By the way, this one definition is worth everything. It's worth the entire class. Autonomy. The political independence of a nation. The right and condition of power of self-government. The negation of a state of political influence from without or from foreign powers. I don't think I can't say this definition enough. Anybody that believes in the concept of sovereignty, by the way, sovereignty only exists in the man himself. The man is only sovereign within his kingdom, and his kingdom only extends as far as his skin does. My kingdom is from the top of my head to the tips of my toes and the extent of my skin. All of the cells, the trillions of cells in my body are the constituency of my kingdom. Each cell is one of the constituents of my kingdom. My kingdom does not extend beyond my body. I am the sovereign over my body. That's it. I would laugh at anybody that considers themselves the sovereign beyond their body. I would laugh at them. By the way, if your body is the kingdom, who is the king? The king is the mind. The king is the mind. If you abdicate the throne, if you lose your mind, you are abdicating the throne. if you abdicate the throne, i.e. lose your mind to some other power, some other authority, be it religion or some external government, autonomy is about internal governance. The king, i.e. your mind, governs your body. The spirit is the life force of that body. Let me go back to autonomy, because this is the most important definition you will ever hear, ever. Autonomy, the political independence of a nation. Most people will shut down right there. Oh yeah, a nation. Screw the nation. I'm not interested in the nation. I'm interested in the man. The political independence of a nation. The right and condition of power of self-government. The negation of a state of political influence from without or from foreign powers. Here we go, the negation. The negation of political influence from without. That means no politics outside of your skin. Your mind, the king over your individual kingdom, is not being influenced by another political system. It's not influenced by the thoughts or the communal ideas, which is called communism. Yeah, we all got to take care of each other. Bullshit. The greatest gift I can give to anybody is to not be a burden on their lives. That's the greatest gift I can give to anybody, is to not be somebody's burden that they have to carry. Think about it. Think if everybody was their own, carried themselves, if they did not have to carry their neighbor. Do you realize that the people that don't do for themselves, they're a burden? Do you realize that I can't even afford to send my own son to school because of all the money that would be taken away from me to give to somebody else so their kids can go to school for free? Because I don't know why. I should be able to afford, first, everything for my family. In my realm, my kingdom is my physical body. Number one, I should take care of that first. If you don't have your health, you have nothing. So take care of your kingdom. Feed the constituents the proper foods to stay healthy. That's doing something good for your constituency, the trillions of cells in your body, in your kingdom. Take care of the inner part of you. Take care of your kingdom first. And if you take care of your kingdom, you'll be healthy enough mentally and physically to take care of your offspring, your property, your children, your wife, your husband. But you got to start with the self. Even biblically it says, love thy neighbor as thyself, which automatically presumes that you love yourself first. You know, I'll tell you what's going on right now in the world is everybody hates themselves. They hate their life. They can't stand their position. They're confused about everything. And guess what their neighbor gets? Not even that. Not even that. So the Bible says to love thy neighbor as thyself, which presumes you love thyself. I'm just trying to drive the point home that your sovereignty does not extend beyond your skin. It doesn't extend beyond your skin. That's where everything is right there. That's your entire political system, is yourself. That's what self-governance is. I'm going to read this again. Autonomy. This is out of Black's. This is page 122, Black's fifth. The political independence of a nation. The right and condition of power of self-government. The negation of a state of political influence from without. From without. Meaning that nothing external is influencing your internal governance. Your friends don't call you up, when you're supposed to be doing something important, something very important for your family or for yourself. They say, hey, Kurt, let's go grab some beers. My self-governance, if I'm in control of what? My body, even though my body says, yeah, let's go do it, man. My mind, the king, says, that's not smart. So my mind overrides my body that's screaming to go out and party because I have self-governance. I have self-control. And if I control myself, I do not need to be controlled externally. If I can't control myself, that's called, well, they believe it's called anarchy, because that's the definition of anarchy. But here's what's weird. If I can't control myself, then somebody else steps in. If I abdicate my throne, which is my mind, if I lose my mind to some vice, I'm out of control. And that's when somebody else steps in and controls me. And right now, everybody's out of control. So again, it says the negation of a state of political influence from without or from foreign powers. Anything external to your body is foreign. Anything external to your body is foreign. You know what? That includes the afterbirth. Is the afterbirth foreign to your body right now? Yes. All of it is, both the maternal and the fetal. The fetal tissue, is it foreign to your physical existence right now? Yes. The chorion, even though it has my DNA, is foreign to my kingdom right now because it's not here with me. It's not attached to me. So, the afterbirth is it a constituent part of my kingdom? Does it have my DNA? Yes. I'm talking about the chorion now, the fetal tissue. Is the chorion within me or without? Is it internal or external? It's external. Even though it has my DNA, it's still a foreign influence. And that's a problem. Let's go to Autonomy Online, Merriam-Webster. What does Merriam-Webster say? The quality or state of being self-governing, especially the right of self-government. 2, self-directing, freedom, and especially moral independence. And 3, a self-governing state. Self-government. I'm going to click on that hyperlink just to see where it takes me. Self-government. Self-control. Self-command. 2, government under the control and direction of the inhabitants of a political unit rather than by an outside authority. Control of one's own affairs. By the way, the French word affair means business. So, again, self-control, self-command. And finally, I'll just go one step further to see what self-control says. Restraint, exercised over one's own impulses, emotions, and desires. When I was talking about the mind, body, spirit, the body is the animal side of your existence. Without the mind, without the higher mind, the body is nothing more than an animal. If you can't govern all of the impulses, just like I said, my buddy's calling me up right now, I'm on this call, and you know what? If my body overrides my mind, I'm hanging up on all you people and I'm going to go drink. That's the animal instinct to go party, to just go have fun. And again, self-control says restraint exercised over one's own impulses, emotions, and desires. The body itself, before the higher mind was established, the cerebellum, and I'm talking about physical structure, it had what's known as the brainstem, which many people know as the reptilian brain, the fight or flight and all that stuff. That's the people that are acting in what appears to be extremely selfish, which could be what? What do they call basically they're psychologically inept. But the point is that the brainstem is the animal side of your existence. It's the one that is ruled by impulses. It's ruled by emotion. It's ruled by desires. And if you can't contain the animal within you, you are out of control. The whole man is the mind, the higher mind, controlling the animal body. And of course, the animal body is animated by the spirit. So all three of these things have to be connected in order for you to be considered whole. In the court system, what they've done is they have divided these parts. They separate them. On paper even, in the birth system that they created back in 33, they actually separated the body from the mind, or the body from the spirit, or the mind from the body. They've done that. And what they have us doing is arguing to bring it back together. The word integrity is to mean all parts together, whole. So, what do I have here? So what's funny is, I've been saying this for years, is that the mind is programmable where the heart is not. The heart is the truth detector. If you actually listen to your heart, you can actually see things as they are. The mind, obviously, with television and all the things going on out there, whether it's the staged, school shootings and all this stuff, that's to get the mind to believe something. It's the programming going on so they can do what? Elicit the emotions they want out of the animal body. So then we'll start to act a certain way. It's like pushing a button. We'll do this and you will do that. There's no doubt. They know the nature of man so well. I'm going to go back to this whole man drawing a little bit later. What I want to do now is just go to the one called perspective. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you see the connections that they've made over time. So the whole man is the mind, the body, and the spirit all in one place at one time. In other words, if there's any deviation, if there's any split, if there's any separation with any one of those three, if it's separated at all, if your mind is over there and you're physically over here, that's called vacation. You realize that in Europe they don't use the word vacation? Because to vacate is to be mindless. They use the word holiday. They don't go on vacation. They take a holiday. Because vacation is to actually lose your mind, to vacate. Again, so in order to be whole, you have to have the mind, the body, and the spirit in one place. Now, if you look at that triangle from the inside, the mind is the subject. In other words, it's the character. I mean, if you look past the mind, it says person, name, ego, and all that stuff. That's the subject side of the equation in the courtroom. The body, the foundation, the grounds, the substance, and the thing is called the matter. So you have the subject over here and the matter over there. The joinder, the thing that they're trying to get, is for you to walk in there as the living spirit and put those two together. They're holding one side of it. You go over there and you give them the other side. You perfect their claim. They have a defective claim. As soon as you walk in there, you perfect their claim. So anyway, I don't want to get into that tonight. We're going to get into that later on and over the weeks. Let's go over to the word, the drawing called perspective. It's just a bunch of words. But I want to get through this stuff because the meat of this stuff is actually coming up. The whole man, mind, body, spirit. If you look at the perspective page, the mind, body, and spirit are at the top. What I did is I took words that mean exactly the same thing in their world. So mind, body, spirit also equals the Holy Trinity. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. The mind is the Father. It's the director. It's the Lord. It's the one that is the ruler over that kingdom. It's the king. The Father. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Mind, body, spirit. Last name, first name, middle name. Mind, body, spirit. captain, ship, wind, mind, body, spirit. Let's go over that real quick. The captain gives direction to the vessel or to the ship. The ship is the body. It's the very thing. By the way, have you ever looked up the word hull? The word hull means the body. So the captain is the mind, the ship is the body, and the wind blowing into the sails is the spirit. You're the wind beneath my wings. You're what lifts me up. You're the spirit that moves you. The spirit moves the body. The wind moves the ship. The Holy Ghost is the life, is the spark. And then, of course, you got the state is the mind, the state of mind. You've heard it 1,000 times in your life. The church is the body. And the thing that moves the church or the state or connects them is the I am. Present. And finally, by the way, there's probably 50 of these that I can do, but the house is the mind, the land is the body, and the title is the spirit. The title moves the land. The title moves the house. So what I'm trying to do is just show you that they have lots of ways to describe the mind, the body, the spirit. And you'll see them all the time in all different ways. Let me see what else I have up here real quick. So let's go back real quick to autonomy. The political independence of a nation. The right and condition of power of self-government. You know what? Before I forget, I'm going to go to anarchy at Webster's, Merriam-Webster's online. I have to do this. Anarchy, A-N-A-R-C-H-Y, anarchy, Merriam-Webster. Let's see what they say. What anarchy is. I always thought of anarchy as self-governance. In other words, but what does it say here? It says the absence of government. Anarchy, the absence of government. B, a state of lawlessness or political disorder due to the absence of government. Governmental authority. C, a utopian society of individuals who enjoy complete freedom without government. 2, absence or denial of any authority or established order. B, absence of order, disorder. Let's think about this for a second. So they're saying anarchy is the absence of government. Let me do one last thing here. I'm going to look up anarchy, the generic definition, because I have a thought here. Anarchy definition. This is the generic term that comes up right away. A state of disorder due to absence or non-recognition of authority. The absence of government and absolute freedom of the individual regarded as a political ideal. So anarchy is the absence of authority. It's the absence of authority. Is that external or internal? See, is anarchy where you don't have the ability to control yourself? It says the absence of all government. So if you don't govern thyself, it falls to the animal side of the equation, the body itself. In other words, the emotions, the vices. You fall to that side of the equation without your own, the ability to control yourself. So this is if you want to learn what is the most important thing, do you realize that the guys that set this place up, the Declaration of Independence, they didn't want governance outside of themselves. They wanted to be able to self-govern. Again, it says, the right and condition of power of self-government, the negation of a state of political influence from without or from foreign powers. These guys did not want the government to be externally to be telling them what to do. They knew innately right from not right. I don't like using the word right and wrong because they're not quite the same thing. The right and not right. So, it's important to know this stuff because if you don't understand the idea of the mind, body, and spirit within the singular man, you don't realize how important each one of those aspects are. If you lose your mind, remember the mind is programmable. If you lose your mind to some other idea, well, again, if you all of a sudden find yourself, in the Hare Krishnas, no offense, but that you've lost your mind to an idea. You're no longer self-governing. You're doing things that you normally wouldn't do. And the body's the same way. If your body's under the control by some piece of paper, some title, or if your body's in another location in their world, or at least by paper, your body's in two different places. That doesn't make any sense. You can't govern both places. So where you are right now in the present moment, in this place, here and now, as you listen, you're the government over that. But what about that piece of you that's left out there somewhere? Who's governing that piece if you're not? If it's not part of your realm, if it's not part of your kingdom, which only extends as far as your skin, who's governing that? And that's where there's a problem here. Because that chorion exists, because the fetal tissue is external to you, there is the ability for them to make the claim. And that's a piece of you that has been abandoned. It's been abandoned by mom. It's been abandoned by you. It's been abandoned by me. Well, not at this point, but it has been abandoned. So let's really get into this stuff now, because this is the most important drawing. It's called, I think I wrote it down, it's the zygote drawing. The zygote drawing. I'm going to go and I'm going to read the zygote document because that'll set the stage for this drawing. And there's only a handful of words in that document that nobody else will ever see. And I need to point that out to everybody. So let me get to that zygote document real quick. Okay, here we go. Zygote. I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to use the drawing called zygote. So here's the document called zygote, and then I'm going to read what it says here. Zygote. A zygote, meaning joined or yoked, from to join to yoke, is a eukaryotic cell formed by a fertilization event between two gametes. The zygote's genome is a combination of the DNA of each gamete and contains all of the genetic information, by the way, all the genetic information. By the way, you know what the birth record is called? It's called information. And you know what that information is called? It's called knowledge. Do you realize that somebody has knowledge of you? They have the information which gives them the right to the DNA. You see how this is working? So the genetic information necessary to form a new individual. So they're taking two different entities, and they together create a new individual. In multicellular organisms, the zygote is the earliest developmental stage. In single-celled organisms, the zygote can divide asexually by mitosis to produce identical offspring. Humans. In human fertilization, a release ovum and a haploid sperm cell combine to form a single diploid cell called a zygote. So mom and dad, their product, combine to create a single. In other words, two hearts now beat as one. A zygote. Once the single sperm enters the oocyte, it completes the division of the second meiosis, forming a haploid daughter. By the way, you don't have to know all this. I put the science in there. There's other documents in P-Cloud that will explain this. If you choose to dig deep into this, you don't have to, but if you're really interested in the science behind this, it is at P-Cloud. I did put it up there. A haploid daughter with only 23 chromosomes, almost all of the cytoplasm and the sperm in its own pronucleus. The other product of meiosis is the second polar body with only chromosomes but no ability to replicate or survive. In the fertilized daughter, DNA is then replicated in two separate pronuclei derived from the sperm and the ovum, making the zygote chromosome number temporarily diploid. After approximately 30 hours from the time of fertilization, fusion of the pronuclei and immediate mitotic division produce two daughter cells called blastomeres. And here we go. Between the stages of fertilization and implantation, fertilization, in other words, when the sperm enters the ovum, fertilization, and implantation what? The uteral wall of mom. So there's this thing, this ball, this zygote that is separate. It's just like floating out there in the sea in mother's waters. And until it plants itself in the wall, it's pretty much free-floating. It says the developing human is a pre-implantation conceptus. Does anybody see the word concept or conception? The word conception, by the way, if you look it up, means idea. Conceptus. There is some dispute about whether this conceptus should no longer be referred to as an embryo, but should now be referred to as a proembryo, which is terminologically that traditionally has been used to refer to plant life. And here's what I found in this document that I could not believe I was reading. It said some ethicists and legal scholars make the argument that it is incorrect to call the conceptus an embryo because it will later differentiate into both intra-embryonic and extra-embryonic tissues and can even split to produce multiple embryos or identical twins, while others have pointed out that as so-called extra-embryonic tissues are really parts of the embryo's body that are no longer utilized after birth. Let me read that again, because what they're saying is what starts out as one zygote, one beingness, it splits into extra-embryonic tissues and intra-embryonic tissues. The intra-embryonic tissues turns into baby. Let me say that again. The intra-embryonic tissues turn into baby. The extra-embryonic, remember this is all part of one embryo. It's all part of one thing. It's just one, but now it's splitting into another thing. So it was whole, and now it's splitting off into an extra-embryonic position as well. That is what they're calling your sibling. It's like a brother. And that becomes the chorion. So let me read that last thing again, because the ethicists are arguing about this. They're saying you can't call this all one thing when it turns into afterbirth, and it's no longer part of baby. That's what they're saying here. They're arguing about it right here on the paper. It says, will later differentiate into both intra-embryonic, that turns into baby, and extra-embryonic tissues, and can even split to produce multiple embryos, identical twins, while others have pointed out that as so-called extra-embryonic tissues are really parts of the embryo's body, it's part of the baby originally, that are no longer utilized after birth. In other words, it becomes waste material. It becomes part of the afterbirth. So they're telling you right here in this highlighted area that what was once one embryo, a piece of that embryo called extra-embryonic tissue, is now waste material, which is you out there outside of yourself. Right now, everybody listening to this is probably sitting down in one place, but this extra-embryonic tissue this chorion that was left behind in the hospital, it's equal to you when it comes to legal terms. Remember, that's called born alive. And that becomes a legal person. And that's the person that gets registered, by the way. So this zygote document, I don't have to read anymore. I just wanted to get to that place where it actually describes the intra-embryonic tissue, which is baby, and the extra-embryonic tissue, which turns into the afterbirth. But it all starts out as the fertilized ovum called the zygote. It's one piece, one thing, and then it splits off and turns into you, baby, and the second coming, or the afterbirth. So what I did was I took that concept and I drew it out. I drew it out. And that's the document that's called the zygote drawing. So what I have, if you're looking at it right now, I call it the duality, and then underneath that it says of creation. The duality of creation. By the way, this might be the most important document to know. If you know this document, you will know what they're doing in the courtroom. You'll know who they're speaking of or what they're speaking of. And you'll also know that this document explains the trust. It explains the diversity of citizenship. It explains everything when you know what this is saying. So the duality of creation, the duality from birth. So I have the sign there. On the left side, you got the symbol for female, and on the right side, you have the symbol for, well, it looks like an erect male. Sorry, we're all adults here. So you got the female on the left, and you got the male on the right. The female produces the ovum. So that's the circle just below the female there. And the male produces the sperm. Now, when that ovum gets penetrated by a single sperm, most of the time, it becomes what you see there in the middle, which is called the zygote. Now, what's interesting about that circle with the dot in the middle, the circle is the ovum, and the dot in the middle represents the sperm. Does anybody know what that symbol is called? I wrote it up there, so everybody's going to cheat. But the word is called the circumpunct. So that symbol, the circle with the dot in it, is called a circumpunct. Let me just do this real quick. I'm going to look this up because, again, this is how my brain works. The circumpunct, I'm going to just go to Wikipedia. They call it a circle dot at Wikipedia. Let me see. I'm going to go to something else. It says a circle dot, circumpunct, or circle with a point at its center, is an ancient symbol. It can represent the solar system. It's a solar symbol used to represent the sun. But let's go to something where it's a little Gnostic warrior has something probably a little more interesting about the circumpunct. The circumpunct, by the way, it says is one of the most primitive of all symbols. That's the original symbol for God. Why? Why is it the original symbol for God? Because it's the moment of creation. When that ovum gets fertilized by the sperm, that is creation, and that is God. Now, knowing that the fertilized ovum is creation, it's the very moment of creation. I call it the singularity. That's where two distinctly different people have unified. You have the female and the male, the Mother Earth and Heavenly Father, the seed of Father now planted in Mother Earth. And that's the moment of creation of a new man, a new being. Now you have the potential. So that creates the biological, the body itself. It doesn't, the spirit, whether it's there or not, I don't know. I'm not going to talk about that tonight. But that circumpunct represents creation. It represents God. Now, here's an interesting question. If that circumpunct, and by the way, it's the most ancient of all symbols, if that represents God, then what is God? God is both mother and father. Mother and father are required to create. Mother and father are required to create. Mother cannot create on her own. Sorry, ladies. You might have an awful lot of power, but you can do nothing on your own when it comes to creating a child. You can't do it. Funny thing is I'm about to prove that you do. But you cannot produce a baby on your own. You can't do it. You need a biological man to do it. You need the sperm of a man. So, this circumpunct, this zygote, this singularity is now potential. So the next drawing down shows the circle with sort of a crescent moon outside of it. The circle itself represents the intra-embryonic tissue and the extra-embryonic tissue. In other words, the circle itself has a dark side to it. I'm not talking about the separate dark side. I'm talking about just the dark side itself. The circle now that used to be a circumpunct, used to be a zygote, that zygote now has a piece of it starting to separate off. It's separated itself. It goes external. It is now the outside of the zygote. It's the outside, the external part. It's extra-embryonic tissue. What I drew next to it was actually the maternal tissue. So you have the zygote about to be implanted into the uteral wall. That's what that's showing. So you have the zygote with both its intra-embryonic tissue, and you have the zygote with the extra-embryonic tissue showing in that one picture right there. And again, to the right of that circle is the uteral wall or mom. At the very bottom, you have the result of birth. Okay? So what I did was something a little neat for most of you that follow flags and things like that. At the very bottom left, you have the product of the birth itself. So you have baby to the far left, that's my little stick figure, plus a star, that is what I'm calling the extra embryonic tissue or the zygote, or the chorion, it's the chorion. And then the crescent moon is actually the maternal afterbirth material. It's the reason I put the word maternal and then I put the word moon beneath it is because the moon or the lunar side of things, remember that the lunar cults, the Vatican is ruled by the lunar cults. So I just put that in there because the moon represents mom, or the female side of the equation. So you have three products from the birth. You have baby. That star represents the chorion, which is external to baby. And then the crescent moon represents the maternal afterbirth. There are three things that come out of mother. Baby, chorion, which is fetal tissue after birth, and maternal tissue. Now, before we go any further, before we get away from this picture, because this picture could take months to describe it. I'm just going to try to really dig deep into this thing. So let's go back to the top again. You have mother and father. Mom offers up an ovum. Father produces and offers up a sperm. Those two, through fertilization, create a singularity, a single moment. By the way, it's the only time where two different beings exist separately as one. Because until cell division, the ovum and the sperm, they represent mom and dad separately. So until there's any kind of meiosis, until there's cell division, that's the only time where there's a singularity between mom and dad, between two different beings. So you have the ovum is one being, the sperm is another being, and when the ovum is fertilized and causes the zygote to exist, at that moment, that very moment, it's the only time two beings are represented in a singular place, a singular space. A singular space. Maybe we should talk about that just for a second. What is space? I know most people right now, when I say the word space, they looked up as if space was out there, above the earth. It isn't. Space is everywhere. If you take up space, it's because you have what? Substance. You have a physical makeup. You're taking up space. Does a name take up space? If you say Kurt, does it take up space? Absolutely not. But does the name represent something that does take up space? Of course it does. So the name represents space. Anyway, I'm just trying to get people to understand. They need to think differently about things. Space. Where are you? Is it possible to occupy two different positions in space? Is it possible to occupy two different positions in space? Either you are here or you are there. You can't be both here and there. And that's why I'm going to go back to this document again. When you look down at the very bottom, you have baby. Baby grows up into you guys, grows up into me. But the chorion is also part of baby. It's part of that zygote. And that is not in the same place. It's not in the same situation. It's not in the same location. In fact, the word situs, we've seen it before. Let me go to Black's Law real quick and look up the word situs. Situs. Where did you hear the word situs before? How about a foreign situs trust? A site. The word site, S-I-T-E. A plot of ground suitable or set apart for some specific use. I'm not making this up. A seat or ground plot. The term does not itself necessarily mean a place or tract of land fixed by definite boundaries. Also see place, site, and situs. Let me read this again because I want you to defer back to this zygote document. Remember, a piece of you, remember your body is the land of your soul. A piece of that land is external to you right now. A piece, a parcel of land is external to you. It's located somewhere else. It's on a different site. Let me say this again. Page 1243, Black Fifth, site, S-I-T-E, a plot of ground suitable or set apart for some specific use. Some specific use. A seat or ground plot. The term does not itself necessarily mean a place or tract of land fixed by definite boundaries. By definite boundaries. What is it? Why would they say that? Because your physical body with that DNA has definite boundaries. You're bound only by your skin. Your existence is bound by your skin. That's a boundary. But because your DNA extends beyond the boundaries, it's off-site. That chorion is off-site. So it's extended beyond the boundaries of your body. even though it's the same DNA. But it says a plot of ground. On what grounds? Listen, when the judge says on what grounds, they're talking about the DNA. They're talking about the land. On what grounds? Let's see what it says for situs. Situs. Latin for situation, location. Location or place of crime or business. Crime or business. So if my DNA is located somewhere, let's say, in the District of Columbia, then Curtis Richard Kallenbach, that's tied to that DNA, is a resident in the District of Columbia, which means the jurisdiction then is D.C. You could see that if they have DNA of mine and the title, the original title, in their possession, they have a legitimate claim in the courtroom. I have to fight for reality. But they have the facts, just the facts, ma'am. They have the facts on their side. And because there's no paper ever written for a living being, the birth record is not for the living being. That would be a document of slavery. There is no paper on the baby. There's only paper on the event. And the event marks the arrival of what? Well, whatever arrived is missing, but they do have this left behind material. That's all they have. Situs. Site. Position. The place where a thing is considered. Does it really say that, Kurt? Yes, it does. The place where a thing is considered. Remember the whole man triangle there? The matter, which is the body with the foundation, the grounds, the substance, or the thing? What's the matter? Kurt, what's the matter? The matter is the thing. And it says here under situs, the place where a thing is considered. For example, with reference to jurisdiction over it, or the right or power to tax it. Really? You wonder why they have the authority to tax you? It's because a piece of you is within the jurisdiction, within their taxable authority. Is it possible to tax a living man? Absolutely not. Is private property taxable? Absolutely not. Is your labor private property? Is it your property? Well, it sure is. Then why is it being taxed? Because it's in the hands of somebody else. Your physical body is in the hands of somebody else. We need to start understanding that private property is not taxable. And if your labor is your private property, how can there be a tax on your labor? It's because the piece of you is somewhere else. It goes on to say, it imports fixedness of location. How about the word fixed? Is it possible? I mean, I'm sitting down right now. But you know what? I'm going to get up. I just got up out of my chair, and I'm walking across my living room. Now I'm going to sit down on the couch over here. Is my body fixed in a fixed position? No. As long as there's life in it, I can get it up. I can command it as the what? As the director, as the king. I can actually command my body to get up as long as there's life in it, and my mind is intact as long as all three, mind, body, and spirit, are all in one place. I have the complete authority over my kingdom, and I say, you know what, Kurt, why don't you go back and sit in your chair? I get up now again, and from this position, and I move over to my chair again. Am I fixed? Am I in a fixed position ever? No. What is the only time you're in a fixed position? What is the only time a body is ever in a fixed position? There's only one. In a cemetery. The only time a body is in a fixed position for the duration is in a cemetery, when it's devoid of the spirit. When a body is a cadaver, when a body is devoid of spirit and it's buried or whatever, that's the only time it's fixed. Does the afterbirth, does the chorion, is it capable of mobility? Can it move? No. It is fixed. The afterbirth is in a fixed position. It's frozen. in a fixed position. It's stuck where it is. It does not move. Let me continue on situs. It imports fixedness of location. So does your physical body right now have a situs? Absolutely not. You're always moving. You're always moving. Even sleeping, you're rolling around in your covers. Your body is never in a fixed position until you are dead. But look what it says, situs. Situs imports fixedness of location. So having a situs automatically presumes that land, that substance, is fixed. That means it can't be alive because only a dead body is fixed. Situs of property for tax purposes is determined by whether the taxing state has sufficient contact with the personal property sought to be taxed to justify, in fairness, the particular tax. Generally, personal property has taxable situs in that state where owner of it is domiciled. It says personal property has its taxable situs in that state where the owner is domiciled. Situs of a trust means place of performance of active duties of trustee. Situs. How about, so now, the concept of a foreign situs trust. Foreign situs trust, meaning a location foreign to anywhere beyond you. Remember, your kingdom extends as far as your skin extends. I'm hoping to actually make my kingdom smaller by about 15 pounds. Go back to autonomy. The negation of a state of political influence from without or from foreign powers. Situs implies a foreign location. And a foreign situs trust means that there's a piece of property that is external and away from you in another jurisdiction. I'm not off target here, people. I'm just trying to be extremely thorough in the idea that when they sweep up the floors and they take that DNA called chorion that is an exact sample of you and they move it to another position, that chorion has no spirit. It dies very soon and becomes a decedent very soon. The chorion then stays where it is from the moment it's placed there. It is fixed. So a foreign situs trust is established. Why is it a trust? Because there's two different positions, two different claimants now. There's you, the living, perfect man, and then there's the piece or part or mini-me called chorion, the afterbirth, the abandoned property that has yet to be claimed. I'm going to, what time is it, 9:24? I'm going to finish up on something very important. And this is the idea, the concept of being. Being, B-E-I-N-G. What does it mean to be? Hamlet spoke of it. I might even find Hamlet real quick. But to be or not to be. What does be imply? I'm gonna go get the definition real quick, but what is to be? Well, you can't, be implies the present moment. The past, you can't be in the past, and you can't be in the future. You can only be in the present. By the way, the word present means grace. And life and God, the grace of God is life itself. Life only exists in the present. There is no life in the past, and there is no is. I'm using the word is. I'm trying to be clear here. There is no life in the past, and there is no life in the future. Life only exists in the present, and God is life. So God only exists in the present. If you're fixed, frozen in time in the past, does God exist in the past? No. Does God exist in the future? No. God only exists in the present. Life only exists in the present. How can a man prove life when he's frozen in the past? Seneca Vai says when a man proves life, he's revested with his title. So you have to be in order for the Seneca Vai to kick in and you to receive back your property. You have to be. By the way, for those that don't understand the concept of time, they should go to the XYZ site and start looking at my discussion on calendars. I'm not going to do that in this course, but you need to understand the calendar concept of time. But to be or not to be, that is the question. What is let me see, what does Hamlet say about that? Hamlet. To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of trouble, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep perchance to dream. There's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come? When we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity so long life. It's talking about life and death. To be is alive. Death is the eternal slumber. Sleep. Let's go to the definition of be. By the way, you won't find the definition of be in Black's Law. There are certain words that don't show up in there because they destroy their entire system. Their entire system has no place for the living. So the word be cannot be in their dictionary. It destroys their case. So, what is to be? What does it mean to be? Okay, Merriam-Webster online. To be. To equal in meaning. Have the same connotation. Symbolize. Okay? To symbolize. Does Curtis Richard Kallenbach symbolize anything? Yeah, anything. Yes. Curtis Richard Kallenbach symbolizes a part of the afterbirth. It's a symbol of the afterbirth. Is it the afterbirth? No. But it symbolizes, it's the title to the afterbirth, or at least a piece of the afterbirth. So when Curtis Richard Kallenbach is spoken of, the name, it's referring to the body, the matter, the foundation, the ground, the substance, the thing itself. It's the title. Here's something strange. Have you ever seen the words for a nominal fee? Nominal fee. What does nominal mean? Name. So in other words, when you stake a name or give up a name, that's the nominal side of it. So what are you giving somebody for when you give them a nominal fee? You give them a name. For a nominal fee, you think it's just a small quantity. No, nominal is name. So, and the name, of course, does what? It's a symbol. B, to have identity with, to constitute the same idea or object. To be. It is something. Okay, C, to constitute the same class. And there's examples, like these 3 books are the authoritative works on the president's life. Are. So in other words, it says to constitute the same class. By the way, in court, if they don't get a name from somebody, they issue a name, and it's a John Doe. That is a class of person. So, D, to have a specified qualification or characterization. You know, I got into a little bit of that last night about the personality, a character. At my Christmas, I was playing at least 4 roles. I was playing the character of Grandpa, the character of husband, the character of dad, and the character of stepdad. There is a document, you guys have it. It's called the vested, let me see. I didn't put this on the list because I didn't know if I'd get to it tonight. It's called vested or contingent remainders. We all know what the remains are. The remainder, it's the left behind material. Vested or contingent remainders, the perennial enigma. And on page 137 of that document, they say something so amazing. It says, a future estate. Now listen, when my spirit enters that zygote, I haven't been born yet. I have a future estate that has yet to be granted to me. I haven't come out of the womb yet, so all I have is a future estate. Here we go. A future estate is either vested or contingent. It is vested when there is a person in being, who would have an immediate right to the possession of the property on the determination of all the intermediate and precedent estates. It is contingent while the person to whom or the event on which it is limited to take effect remains uncertain. This might be the smoking gun. A future estate is either vested or contingent. It is vested when there is a person in being. Does it really say person in being? Person in being. In other words, the person, which is, remember, I'm going to go back to it, nobody, remember nobody, which is what? Where was it? It was yesterday I talked about nobody. This is online etymology. Nobody. What does it mean? No person. So everybody running from the person is nobody. And now we're going to this. It says, it is vested when there is a person in being. If I don't wear the character, if I don't take on the person, I am nobody. I have no body. I am of no substance. I do not exist. It says a future estate is either vested or contingent. It's contingent, meaning that you don't get it yet. You only get it when you are in being, when you are here now. If you never show up, if you never can prove life, you never get your property. It's contingent upon you showing up here and now. A future estate is either vested or contingent. It is vested when there is a person in being who would have an immediate right to the possession of the property. Immediate right to the possession of the property. And yet everybody's presumed dead. Everybody's civilly dead. Everybody's running from the person. They haven't claimed the very person that gives them the rights to their own life. The afterbirth has been getting everything. There's a movie out there. It's called Rain Man. Rain Man has the brother that's out there successful, or he's trying to move. He does things in the real world, and then there's the Rain Man, the defective afterbirth position, played by Dustin Hoffman. And that character is what? He's institutionalized, just like the afterbirth is. It's institutionalized. That movie, if you watch that movie with the right set of eyes, you see the one character played by Tom Cruise. That's you. That's the baby. That's the firstborn. The afterbirth is played by Dustin Hoffman as the defect. And the defect has all the property. It has all the money. It's all going to the institution. Let me read this paragraph one more time. A future estate is either vested or contingent. It is vested when there is a person in being. To be or not to be. What else does it say here at Webster's about to be? To belong to a class of. To have an objective existence. To be. To have an objective existence. Have reality, actuality. It says live, L-I-V-E. An objective existence. You can see it. Can you see a name? Can you see Curtis? When I say Curtis, can you see that? Can you see Curtis Richard Kallenbach? Can you see Curtis Kallenbach? Can you see Kallenbach, Curtis Richard? Does that character have an objective existence? No. The title has no objective existence. It does exist on paper, but it doesn't exist in reality because the substance gives rise to the title. Without the baby, there is no need for a name. After fertilization, did my mom and dad come up with Curtis Richard Kallenbach before the ovum was fertilized? The substance gives rise to a title. There's no need for a title without the substance. The land, if there's no land, there's no title. Let me go back to be again. It says to have, maintain, or occupy a place, situation, or position. Wow, that sounds like a situs to me. A situation. In fact, if you look up the word situs, the first word there is situation. To have an objective existence. Actually, you can physically see it. What's funny is in a courtroom when a judge walks in and they say, all rise, what are they doing? Are they separating the body from the spirit right there? It goes on to say to have, to maintain, or occupy a place, situation, or position. To remain unmolested, undisturbed, or uninterrupted. To take place, to occur. Do you realize that if you can't get back to that birth record, if you can't claim that record, if you can't connect yourself to that record, you do not exist? You have yet to occur. You have yet to be born. If you can't tie yourself to that event, you have no substance, and you have no rights, and you are not here. And to be not here is to not be. To be presumes here and now. It's the present moment only. You are either present or not present, to be or not to be, present or not present. If you're not here, how can you claim your life? And if you're not here, where are you? You must be there. It also says here to come or go. I still can't get over the vested or contingent remainders. Again, that's on page 37, right at the very top. Let me finish it. Let me read the next paragraph here because this is so strange to me because they actually call it the now, N-O-W, the now rule. What does now imply? You know what? Screw it. Before I even go any further, let me see what now means at Merriam-Webster. Now, N-O-W. N-O-W. Now. Look at this. Now. This is Merriam-Webster Online. At the present time or moment. By the way, when do you exist? When am I right now? When do I exist? I am. What does that mean? What does I am mean? I am. Am implies beingness. If I wasn't here now, I would say I was or I will be. But to say I am implies to be. And to be is the present moment only. Life exists only in the present. So if you're anywhere but here and now, you are not alive. Be in the time immediately before the present. Now, immediately before the present. In the time immediately to follow, forthwith. There's a movie, and I hated the movie, by the way. It was called Spaceballs. And there's a scene in there where he's looking at the screen. He's on the spaceship, and he's looking at the screen, and the screen is showing the back of his head. And somebody says, what am I looking at? And somebody else jumps in there and says, you're looking at the now. In other words, he was actually seeing himself in the present moment. It's just a really strange scene, but it's the only time I've ever seen it done like that. But let me finish reading this paragraph out of the vested or contingent remainders. It said, I'll start at the top again. A future estate is either, a future estate, by the way, that's key. Because something is waiting for you, and the moment you prove life, you get it. The moment you prove life, you get it. That's the Sedeke Vai. When a man proves life, he's revested with his title. You get your name and everything that's attached to your name. So it says a future estate is either vested or contingent. That means if you came out long before the birth certificates, when baby was born, he was vested with everything. He got everything that was rightfully his. Mom and dad are sitting there, and baby is inheriting everything. But since 1933, they changed it. They made it a possibility to not get your future, to not get your name, to split the title, to make it possible for somebody else to claim you. By the way, I know who that is. It's the Roman Catholic Church, but we'll get into that on another night. So let's start up here again. A future estate is either vested or contingent. It is vested when there is a person in being who would have an immediate right to the possession of the property on the determination of all the intermediate and precedent estate. It is contingent while the person to whom or the event on which it is limited to take effect remains uncertain. Remains uncertain. Remains is the afterverb. Uncertain means whose are they? Who's making the claim on the remains? If the remains are not uncertain, if they know who the remains belong to, the estate is vested. It's the remains, it's the uncertain remains that creates the contingency. Next paragraph. It says, it is in the definition of a vested future estate that the trouble arises. The remainder is vested when there is a person in being who would have an immediate right to the possession of the property on determination of all the intermediate and preceding estates. The writer says, I recall listening to a lecture some years ago in which this was referred to as the now rule. This is probably the explanation of all confusion arising in this matter. What matter? What's the matter? The matter is the DNA left behind. All the confusion arising in this matter. What's the matter? The matter is the remains. So it says, confusion arising in this matter because it was explained that a remainder is vested if there is a person in being now. This stuff sounds crazy until it becomes too obvious. If you read Black's Law long enough, you will see that every single thing leads you back to one thing. One thing. The remains, the afterbirth. When you recognize the remains, the remainder man, the contingent estate is the property or the DNA of the man. Remember, let's finish up with this, because I'll probably do this 100 times before the 6th week is up. Mom walks into the hospital from the soil. This is my mom. She walks from the soil of Illinois, part of the Constitutional Republic from 1818. Illinois 1818 is part of that republic. She walks from the soil of Illinois, from the republic, through the doors of the hospital. Who owns the hospital? The Knights Hospitallers. What did they do? They did what? They received Christian pilgrims. So my mom leaves Illinois and goes into the hospital. But what is she doing? Why is she there? She's carrying a package in her womb. Does she stop by customs when she leaves Illinois to go into the foreign territory? Does she stop by customs to tell them, to declare the package? No, she does not. So she's now in a foreign place, a foreign territory, foreign land. And she goes into this place called a delivery room, and she delivers the package, which happens to be baby. That's one package. She also delivers the afterbirth, which has two constituent parts: fetal tissue, which is called the chorion, and maternal tissue, which is mother's property all by herself. So 3 different distinct things are delivered in that delivery room, in the foreign territory. Once it's delivered, does she call up customs right then and there and declare any of that property to identify what is hers? You know what it's like going to the airport, forgetting a baggage on the carousel. Whose is it? The airport's just going to throw it in lost and found until the owner comes back and picks it up. It's like a baggage. It just keeps going round and round on the carousel. The turnstile, the roundabout, until somebody comes back and claims it. But anyway, so these 3 different distinct things are left behind or are delivered in the foreign territory. Mom does not declare any of it. Baby, firstborn, Curtis, goes home with mom and dad. On the way out of the foreign territory, do they stop by customs and declare baby Curtis? They do not. Is there any record whatsoever of baby Curtis anywhere? No. Now baby Curtis leaves that foreign territory and is never to be heard from again. He's missing, presumed dead after 7 years. What is left behind in the hospital? What gets stuck in the lost and found, which it becomes a foreign situs trust? What gets left behind? The afterbirth for sure. And the afterbirth consists of what? The fetal tissue called chorion, which is an exact replica of you and me, and the maternal afterbirth tissue. Does the maternal afterbirth tissue, why is that only mom's property? Why is it called maternal afterbirth? It's because mom made that up herself within her own body. Dad had nothing to do with the maternal afterbirth. My biological father had nothing whatsoever to do with the creation of the maternal afterbirth. He absolutely had something to do with the chorion or the fetal tissue, but he had nothing to do with the maternal afterbirth, which is a crazy thing because legally the maternal afterbirth is also called born alive. But that child, that born alive child, has no biological father. Biblically, they call that an immaculate conception. No father, no earthly father. Wow, that sounds just like the Bible story. So mom's, the product of mom alone is biblical. It sounds like the Christ child. No biological father. Immaculate conception. Anyway, so there are three things that are delivered in the foreign territory. One of those three things goes home with mom and dad. But it's never declared. So baby Curtis is not known anywhere. But what's left behind? Well, there are two biological pieces of property that are left behind. That's the child, the biological product of mom and dad, and that is the chorion, the fetal tissue, which is, it represents me. Does the word represent mean anything to anybody? When you go into the courtroom, are you representing something? Yes, you are. You're representing the material they have in their possession, the chorion. You are representative of that DNA. I'm not here to represent myself. Yes, you are. You're representing the DNA left behind in the hospital that is now under the care of the state as a ward of the courts. I'm not representing myself. Yes, you are. You're representing the very DNA that was left behind. So, what's left behind? The chorion, which is an exact replica of you, and the maternal tissue. What else is left behind? Well, when mom is filling out all those forms, she puts pen to paper, i.e. literary property, and creates a title. So when she writes down on the paperwork Curtis Richard Kallenbach, she just created a title. Does she take that with her when she leaves the hospital? No, of course not. She forgets that too. That's abandoned as well. So what's abandoned in the hospital, or presumed abandoned? The fetal tissue, which is an exact duplicate of you. So are you abandoned or the fetal tissue? Well, it's one and the same thing. Then the maternal tissue is left behind. That's abandoned. And the title called Curtis Richard Kallenbach is abandoned. Can you start to see why the courts have a legitimate claim upon your life? It's legitimate. Who else is there to claim it? Whoever has come forward. That baggage is still going around the carousel at the airport where you arrived. You never went back there to pick it up. I never went back there to pick it up. Well, I did recently. You know what? And I'll close with this. And I'm going to get back to this on the last week. But I'm going to close with the idea of the why there's something called Minnesota Rule 220. Why it's important to do that. And it all ties together with what I'm talking about up to now. And so now you're going to understand why it's important to do Minnesota Rule 220 in the proper fashion. Because there's three pieces of property that it's being presumed that all three pieces are abandoned. The fetal tissue, which represents you exactly, the maternal tissue, which is mother's property all by herself, and the title, which can identify both the fetal tissue and the maternal. See, that's split in title. See, Curtis Richard Kallenbach was left behind, and so was the fetal tissue and the maternal tissue. So Curtis Richard Kallenbach represents either the fetal tissue, which is me, or the maternal tissue. There's your split in title. Are they claiming you, or are they claiming the maternal? See, they can't claim you, but because the fetal tissue is still inside the maternal tissue, the afterbirth, the chorion is still part of the maternal tissue. So Curtis Richard Kallenbach can identify either my DNA or mom's product. There's your split in title. If I do the right thing, I take Curtis Richard Kallenbach as my own, because that event brought two different pieces of DNA, my DNA and my mother's. But Curtis Richard Kallenbach represents both potentially. So here's what the reason Minnesota Rule 220 is so important. It says, and this is verbatim, I took this right off their site, the registrar of titles is authorized to receive for registration of memorials upon any outstanding certificate of title, an official birth certificate pertaining to a registered owner named in said certificate of title, showing the date of birth of said registered owner, providing there is attached to said birth certificate an affidavit of an affiant to state that he or she is familiar with the facts recited, stating that the party named in said birth certificate is the same party as one of the owners named in said certificate of title, and that thereafter the registrar of titles shall treat said registered owner as having attained the age of majority at a date 18 years after the date of birth shown by said certificate. If you do not do this, if you do not tie yourself to the birth certificate by claiming it as one of the owners, remember there's two potential owners. Who are the only two owners of that title? Who are the only two potential owners of Curtis Richard Kallenbach, the certificate of live birth title? Me, because my DNA matches it, and my mom. We are the only two that can make a legitimate claim on that birth record. Neither one of us do it, ever. And that's why it falls into a split position or a trust position, and that's why it's being administrated over by the courts in probate. Minnesota Rule 220 gives you ownership of that land, that tract of land, which is your DNA, the land of your soul, and now you are whole. By the way, it also does something else very, very important, but most people don't see it. You are now the age of majority. Majority. 66%. How do I know it's 66%? Because there are three potential positions. I drew it out for you in that zygote drawing: baby, chorion, and maternal. Baby, chorion, and maternal afterbirth. There are three different positions.